So, guys, welcome.
Thanks,
It's
Mandy.
it's funny you said I'm a great interviewer, but I never interviewed anyone actually. The one time I tried, it was an epic fail because I think I was trying to be someone else. Like, okay, let me bring you onto my house and I'll be like Ellie Nash and interview someone. He does such a good job, and like, I just wasn't being me. It was awkward, and I'm just like, forget it. This is not working. So I'm just gonna try to be me here. I don't know if I'm a great interviewer, not a great interviewer. It don't matter.
It's funny you say that. You know, yesterday I was at Ellie's property up there called the House of Moore, something like that,
Mhm.
and I mentioned to a friend there who was on Ellie's podcast. I asked her how was it, how was the interview, and she said she was extremely nervous and it was really hard for her. And but she did it, and she was like, proud of herself, and she did a great job. And I thought of you, and I mentioned like I said my friend is such a good interviewer because it's so natural to him. It's just he sits so and so like I feel seeing you sitting in your throne is the word I use. Like you sit very comfortably in your space when you're like just in your space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I love Elliot's podcast, so we'll do a shout out to the In Search for More podcast. There's our
Sure.
first ad. All right, let's backtrack a little bit. So I'm
Awesome.
sitting here with Yoni Banayan and Menachem Tyler. Menachem, I know for a long time. Yoni, I'm just meeting today.
Nice to meet
And
you.
yeah, and you guys are doing some retreat in Costa Rica. And we wanted to talk about that. And I have no idea what you guys are doing. So let's talk about the retreat a little bit, and then let's talk about you guys, because after all, I think if you do a retreat, people are coming for you. We're not there like doing something that someone else did. This is your retreat, and it's going to be with your flavor. So we have to know who you are as well. So maybe Yoni, jump in and say hi and introduce us to the retreat.
Sure, yes.
Okay.
So we're starting off with the retreat introduction and then a personal introduction. So Shema Retreats is a basic concept behind it is how do we take men are maybe they're high 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe they have a job and a family, maybe life's already begun, but there's a kind of gnawing at them, a certain lack of intention, a lack of clarity, and almost like it may be a sense of powerlessness or helplessness. Like, God, this is my life. It's just what it is. And what I'm seeing, maybe in my personal practice, but also at an individual and relational level, is how often we've taken on roles to, because we needed to, because we learned, to be a dad, to be a husband, to be a supporter of a family, or if it's just to step in a certain role, as opposed to really stepping into our individual way. Shema Retreats is all about kind of finding a way to start listening within a little bit more. And often it doesn't mean it has to be a radical shift in life, but at the very least, it has to be a place of where we can start listening to what we truly, what drives us, what moves us. And one of the biggest things I'm seeing is it's fear of rejection, fear of shame, fear of failure, fear of what our friends or community or spouse will think. And the irony is that what most people are really looking for is, I would say everyone really can be a leader of their own, but we're ultimately looking for others to lead us, as opposed to looking inside and going, who am I? What am I? How do I want to live? So when we can remove shame and we can remove fear, we can remove these fears of rejection, fears of whatever the story is. We start to allow our creativity and allow our natural way to become almost like it's like a flower, and we're just like taking off the dust, so it'll naturally shine. And it's the same thing. We're just creating a space for people to. We're going to be removing layers, removing things that are getting obstacles are getting in the way, giving them a place of clarity. And then on top of that, we're doing a lot of energetic practices, moving practices, everything from ice baths to specific breath working, Kundalini yoga, gongs, movements, a lot of other practices that are going to help people kind of shake off dust, move to a new place, step into their power, as well as on a practical, like psychological level, working on the fear, working on those dynamics. So we're working on the energetic piece, working on the biology, on the psychology, all together.
Super cool. So
Yeah.
it's called Shamal Retreats.
Shema, like
Shema?
you got it. Yep,
You
like
got it.
Shema
Like,
Yisrael.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, Shema Yisrael. Okay, Shema,
yeah.
and it's for
And it's kind
men.
of like it's like it's about listening to
Love
ourselves. Yeah.
God.
And that's
Okay,
actually the area where we differ. Like, and a lot of times, programs I find especially in like the coaching and community, often like men's retreat, is very like booyah, masculine, and it's like it's just not really honest. Like, you're not gonna go and scream at work, there's also a certain lack of
mhm.
psychological integrity. Like, there's things we need to clear up, but we can't just sit in a therapist's office. Like, it's not going to provide you results. Like, you need to embody these experiences. You need to shake out. You need to move. Shake things up. However, it's really a little more soft and subtle, and about really finding that inner voice of who and what we are. And it doesn't come just from screaming.
I'm sure there'll be some screaming going on.
Yeah, we're not against it, I wouldn't say our prime focus is we're gonna be screaming a lot and yeah.
Okay, so we're not beating each other up because we're men and we're gonna pound our masculinity out of you. It's more about
Finding what works for you. Yeah.
shedding some layers through all these different practices. It's just a bunch of guys, married, single, it don't matter.
Mhm.
Correct?
Of course. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And where's it gonna happen?
Costa Rica.
You have a spot? Is it
Yeah,
yours?
we're bringing it home. Talking about screaming.
Yeah.
We got a place that has quite a bunch of acres, so lots of privacy. That was the main thing. A lot of these retreats are within a facility that encompasses maybe other rooms or other vacationers or places nearby, and it was very important for me to have not just the entire place to ourselves, large place, but also a few acres around us where you can kind of roam and have time to integrate and time to just reflect. That's a big one. And Costa Rica, I'm saying Costa Rica has a lot of green, and that's a big part of it as well. Is the state is really the environment. It's green is calming. Moving away from the tech, we're going to allow for people to be off their phones, be off their devices, and just allow for themselves to hear themselves. So the work we're doing could really be, they can hear themselves, and the work can integrate. And so that's that's what we're doing in Costa Rica. It's also because it's a quick flight away, and there's something to be said about leaving the place you are to shake things up, to leave your comfort zone. And there's something big. I've done my fair share of retreats, and really it's a big deal to. I remember coming back from one medicine retreat in Ecuador, and the 4-hour taxi ride from the airport to the retreat there and back was a big deal. Not just because it was a 4-hour, not such a joyful ride. It was 4 hours of I have nothing to do but think. I didn't have service. And so I was forced to just sit there after the medicine, before the medicine, think, what am I doing here? So yeah, the travel time, like see if you can sit on the plane and just reflect. Like, what are you here to do? Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. That's makes me think of like you're leaving your physical space, but if you still have your phone, you're totally like just you're on your phone in Brooklyn. You can be on your phone in Costa Rica. You're on your phone. It's a location in its own. You find a lot of people on Shabbos that keep Shabbos and put their phones away. They're like, it's the worst day of my life. So much anxiety. And I think that's exactly the idea. Like, yeah, put your phone away. Let all that schmutz surface. And if you're in a good container, like I guess what you guys are creating, then it's the perfect place to, a place that's comfortable to explore all that anxiety. And what's under it is, the way home, the way to yourself. If you're just constantly running, constantly on the phone, even if you went to a different country, we probably wouldn't get those results.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. Okay.
We're doing it to include all the religious aspects. So it's going to be kosher. It's going to be Shomer Shabbos for those who want to, but there's going to be definitely people there who are not. But there's space for everybody.
All right. That's your target audience is Jewish men between 20, 40, or 50.
Well, yeah, working on that avatar, discussing, this is my first one. Yoni's done his fair share, but for me, I'm bringing this together. I'm not necessarily a facilitator. It's more of I'm bringing this together for something that. So there's something beeping in my room. Yeah, I'm bringing this together as if it's something that I would want, and so I'm bringing the space together and the facilitators together because I would just spent the last 2 years trying a lot of different things, and the more people I meet, I'm like I can. You can't necessarily speed up someone's journey, but you can definitely help them arrive there. It's the same thing. Arrive there quicker. You can help by bringing it to them. Yeah, helping them in that sense. And so I'm the avatar essentially. You're looking at a male figure, late 20s, early 30s, and upwards. Religious, not religious in that space. I'm religious. Married, not married. Yeah, the biggest thing that I've seen when it comes to the healing process for me, and this came up actually last night in the house, was the container. The container is 70% of it, I would say. 75% of it. It's like, okay, so okay, people are asking, so are you going to be doing medicine there? I said, not the medicine that you're referring to. Like, no, definitely not medicine like that.
Plant medicine.
Not plant medicine. No. I'm a fan of it in some, proponent of it in some sense, but not what we're looking to do. We're very much trying to integrate it much more into your lives. And so there's some learning lessons that you can get from Aya or from a psychedelic trip of some sort, but that's not what we're.
Okay, that's a perfect intro into like, who are you guys? So I like that you're saying that because like I was saying earlier, this retreat, there's no like model to base off. We're going to do this thing and be like this guy. And I'm the facilitator of something. I understand. I've never been to a retreat. I really want to go to one. Maybe maybe this is the one, who knows? But the people that are facilitating are part of it. They're not like, okay, we figured life out and now we're going to show you how to, like, no, I'm constantly in that space, in that journey. There's more healing, or I don't even call it healing anymore. It's lifing. It's just life. If I'm alive, there's more juice to suck out of the bones, or marrow, whatever you want to call it. Like, so we're part of it. And you're like, yeah, I'm building this thing around I am the avatar. This is my retreat, and I want, join me, and you bring yourself, and we're all just showing up. The facilitators as well are part of the journey. They're not better or
Exactly. You nailed it.
Maybe guiding a bit, but learning at the same time. So Yoni, yeah, you were saying that in your personal practice, like what is that personal practice?
Before going into that, I wanted to just add in the whole and this is kind of like a fundamental issue with the whole retreat community that I see, is that when you have someone who goes, I have all the answers, that one thing it does is inhibit you to figure out you. So like the way to, you call it enlightenment, shlemut, perfection, or whatever word you want to use, is not through someone else. Like it's ludicrous to think someone else can provide your personal recipe. And so there is a certain aspect of where, yes, I am facilitating. Everything we ever facilitated on are things that I've done myself, enough that I can facilitate in others, and enough that I feel confident enough that I can help others. So there's a certain level of, yes, it's certain efficacy, a certain level of, I know what I'm doing, we know what we're doing, we know the process. But with that in mind, there's a certain level of humanness. No one here is claiming to have everything. There's a certain level of anything anyone is doing, we've all done. It's not like, so that's something I want to emphasize too. There is a certain level of like community around it, but a certain level of like, and here's something that's worked. Here's a process that we found helpful. here's something that we've discovered. Let's discuss about it. What do you think? So there is a certain level of community aspect, but there is a certain level of like test and tried and proven processes that we know are helpful. The goal isn't for people to become our followers or now subscribe to our messaging or story. The point is that we can help people do that for themselves. So I just want to add that part in. Like there is a certain level of like brotherhood about it, and that's very important. Like we're going to be having like weekly or monthly processes together even afterwards. You want to create a community like of people who are, it's not just about a one-off retreat. We want to create sustainable long-term development with people, and we do believe that needs integration long-term. But at the same time, there's also a certain level of like, yeah, we have certain experiences that you may not have, and you can spend the next 10, 15 years of your life figuring those things out, or say, hey, here's a kind of combination of many different things, many different processes that are helpful. So there's a certain level of that as well. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good point. We're not walking in and all trying together new things that we've never done before and see what happens.
But there is a certain level of honesty. Like, yeah, we haven't figured everything out. But I will say, yeah, we definitely have what to offer in that way, where people will learn. There are like methods that take people from not being able to get clarity, from fear, from hiding, from shame, to empowerment, to being in their power. Like there are tried and proven methods that can do that if people are ready for that. And that's important. Like for people listening to this, like you have to want that. Like we're not gonna just talk. Like there are going to be processes where you're gonna be like, oh, that's scary, and you're gonna have to jump in. If you'd like to. It's up to you, but that's really the point. Yeah, so I hope that brings some context as well.
Totally. Yeah. I guess I meant it more in, say, you're doing not a breath work. You're now in a new group of people, and people mirror to us stuff that, we see in people are mirrors. So all of a sudden it's a new group. There's going to be new mirroring. And then the facilitator is not like, I'm beyond that. Like, no. Something will come up for that, and they'll model that, like, oh, this is coming up for me. How do we deal with it?
Yeah.
So you're part of it while you're modeling, and teaching what works.
And also like just reality, like there's time on the retreat for integration. Like we want you to also just sit around and just watch a bird and just be like, you know what? I kind of don't really hear what Yoni's saying there. Like that doesn't sit with me. Like
Right.
Cool. Like we want you to have that ability to think for yourself and like integrate, communicate about it. Like it's not just about like here's a bunch of classes and you just follow us.
Yeah.
There is a certain level of like, okay, well it's about listening. It's about learning about who you are, about what you feel. So there's gonna be hopefully differences in that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Definitely makes sense. I like what you said. If you have the answers, like that kind of stunts your growth right there. Like I got it all figured out. Like, all right, it's time to die. Like it's done.
Yeah.
It's like the questions really like open us up. So like the question opens the door. The answer kind of closes it. Why would you want to have that question? Always live with the question.
Yeah. And the questions shift, like as you said, it goes from like the health illness model to eventually goes to wellness. It's just a spectrum, as people go more and more to that. The question still exists. Like, how do I get to the next place in my life, the place I'd like to be, a little more clear, a little more intentional, a little more focused or centered, or a little more successful in whatever that looks like. So the question always does remain, even though the context changes a little bit.
I'm saying Yoni's definitely saying everything I would love to say. It's great. Yeah, I agree. I'm saying that was the big part of it is we're co-creating it with this. We're co-creating it with you. We're co-creating the space. This is obviously we know what we're doing, but things are going to show up that can only be addressed authentically. If they can be addressed authentically, is by doing it in the moment. And as they show up in the moments, we'll deal with them with the knowledge that we have, but also just an open heart and the ability to let you be seen. And I think that's a big proponent of it. As I was saying earlier, is that allowing for the space to be seen is like 70% of it. It's just allowing yourself to like let go, not 90% of it. It's like all the parts of you. And then there's obvious things like tools to build habits so you can walk away with something. Whether that's building a routine, getting clarity and goals in life. It can be something like practical, like you want to do X, X, and X, or it can be, you just want emotional release. I found for myself that I was so focused on, and often, do revert back to this, on goals. I'm very much goals related. And then if you're not hitting those goals and using discipline to force yourself to that place, you're not going to arrive there. What ended up always being, it was an emotional block. And so focusing on letting go and realizing the emotions and making space for it allows so much room for just progress to happen much more naturally than forced. Now, the other, you can force it. It's just not as enjoyable. Life is so short. You should enjoy it.
Would you be open enough to share with us an example of that in your life?
Ooh. No, I'd happy to. Just see if I can get something live.
Take a minute.
Sure. Yeah. I struggle, as do many, with ADD, for example. And so a lot of dealing with ADD has to deal with, okay, you're not disciplined enough, right? And so trying to force myself into a certain type and area, and then when I would fail, you would follow a feedback loop of shame, which would inevitably just lead to more failure, going to sleep late, waking up late, too much phone use, all the things that create roadblocks from you to progress, really. And now my mantra I've been focusing on is like, not can I avoid this area, is how fast can I bounce back from that area? Because I know that area too well for me to think that's never going to come back. The negative thinking or these patterns, but how well can I, for one, I created a place with help that now I know what good looks like, what a good life is like. And so now I can revert back to it. And so how quickly can I get back to that area? That's my current mantra. Was that an example?
Yeah, I'd like to hear more, because you're saying you're not forcing yourself. I don't want to be ADD, so let me get a bunch of calendars. I'm going to write down my whole day and then follow it. And if it doesn't go well, I start to freak out, and it's just so much force versus, okay, that happened. It's okay. Let's get back to our center.
And on a bigger scale, I'm saying I had a therapist who I worked through with this, where you sat down and asked this. For me, it was a part that was leaving my body. I'm still working through it. This is a work in progress, but it was an energy that I was manifesting and creating in multiple areas, like this. It's kind of out of body. I would call it manic, but it was like this kind of like, I was creating for whatever reason, because it was uncomfortable to sit in a certain space. And once you remove the shame part of it, and you can just sit in there and just like watch the feeling and ask it, you can go as far as asking it where it started. I'm saying you can go all the way back to childhood. When if you really can go back, for some people, and I didn't get this, but going back to screaming in their bed and no one answering them, and it could, you can start them all the way back then.
So, in other words, tell me if this is if I'm on. You said, first of all, I'm dealing with ADD, which I like, and not I am ADD. It's actually just something I'm dealing with. It's not me. Very important. And I'll really get confused with their diagnosis that this is who I am, and like, no, it's not. It's something that I have or I'm dealing with. So good for you. And instead of focusing so much on like, oh, how do I deal with ADD and get organized, it was like, oh, there's a lot of shame that's making them. Once I deal with the shame, I'm removing the source of the ADD. And now, like, I'll flare up once in a while because maybe I'll carry a little bit of shame, but I go to the shame. I don't go to the ADD. I'm dealing with the source of the root of the issue. And then it's like,
I wanted to do something more fun. And so it's like a part of me just wants to like move about. And so when you're like, okay, so you can just make time for yourself to have fun, and then just like not have to shove everything into a box and be like, you're just a disciplined X, you know, it's like, no, you can go back between the two. yeah, I'm not saying there's not a space for discipline, and there clearly is. But it's just,
but it's not so forced.
no, it's
This
not.
the
not
discipline doesn't mean boot camp. Discipline, I have a discipline, and how do I follow my discipline? Is it forceful or is it just natural because that's where I want to be? You know, and like we could get to that space where things are just flowing. Like we don't control our whole life. So what if you have a discipline and you have to get up at 5:30, but all of a sudden your child's sick and now you're in the emergency room and you couldn't go to the gym that day. Well, my discipline says I need it. Like no one cares about your discipline. But how do I keep that space just flowing? You know, and it's not so forced. And when life comes back to where I want it, so to speak, I just roll right back into this where I want to be. It's not so forced. Discipline doesn't mean force. It's just a discipline.
Totally.
I think. I want to get back to Yoni about your practice, but while I have Menachem speaking, you said it's your first time leading a retreat. How do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah. What comes up is you're not the right guy. You're definitely not the right guy for this. But then I think, well, that's exactly why you are the right guy. And so, yeah, I get this all the time asked. And so, yeah, I'm very clear on the fact that I'm not performing.
You're showing up with I'm not the right guy. You can get him at home.
Oh, yeah.
You're coming along.
Yeah, I'm saying if I was in a state where I was previously, I would say I would not be ready to do something like this. But now I am, even though there's parts that are definitely still growing up and learning to be seen. But this is actually holding a retreat. It's part of my cycle. It's like part of the full circle of, well, do I really understand this? Is it fully integrated? And can I make peace with myself with the areas that are not ready? And allow for some failure. Yeah.
Are you forcing yourself? Or is it more
no, I'm allowing it.
You're allowing it to come up and you're still it's not stopping you. It's not controlling you. You're noticing it.
I'm saying before this session, I didn't sit and, you know, like write down a script or think. I sat, closed my computer and I sat and I meditated for 10 minutes just to clear my head. And so just like let go of anything that doesn't show up authentically at the time. And that's not a perfect thing. Like as it showed up, some like anxieties did show up. I just allow myself to flow, being present, hopefully. Just be here.
Well, good for you.
Thanks.
I hope it's really successful.
Amen.
Okay, Yoni. So what's your personal practice? What do you do? Who are you?
All right. Yeah, well, I have a psychotherapy practice. I'm a marriage and family therapist by profession. So, yeah, a licensed marriage and family therapist. Initially, to be a little background, I went to Shiva for probably, I don't know, what was it, 10, 15 years, studied smicha, really went a route a lot. A lot of factors really got me thinking, I don't think this is really the way I can best contribute to people. I didn't think like just sharing halacha with people was the way I'd be most effective in kind of contributing. I think psychotherapy offered a really cool space for me to help people explore themselves and also step out into a new way of being. I really was curious initially on healing my own traumas, my own stories, and I actually didn't really find psychotherapy very helpful for that. And I maybe gone to 20, 30 therapists before finding, okay, they all have some good ideas. And when I put them all together, like I had a kind of a somewhat of a process. I found really when I learned to enter the body as like it was like I don't know how to describe it. It was like I appreciated all the psychology and all those concepts, and those were like the foundations. But then I was able to just like put the beams up, and that was it. I was just able to put the sheetrock on once I got the body part, and that really changed things from like debilitating panic attacks to just living. And it was like a big shift over a couple of years, but that was some really major transition. So for me, a lot of my psychotherapy practice started focusing on a lot of body-oriented issues like dissociation, trauma, eating disorders. Those are all like my specialties because they're all in the body. And in fact, the predominant real issue is dissociativeness. a lack of connection to ourselves, our lack of connection to our body. So my own practice really just focuses on, you know, the art of reconnecting, because not everyone's supposed to connect to their body at the right time. There's a reason why we disconnect. And we need to respect the body's mechanics and way and flow. And when you get to realize, like, the body hides you from itself for a reason, so a lot of my practice became learning where and why their body is acting, almost like an organism, like a cat or a plant. Like, why does its body act this way? And then coming from that angle, there's a whole world that we can see things from, as opposed to like what we said before, like the very small model, like, well, this is I'm doing Tony Robbins training, da da da. It's not just like, well, what's going on? Like, So that ability to really take a big perspective really offers like very powerful ways. And yeah, like for me, it's more like solution oriented and practical. Like, we don't just need to struggle. Like, that's not what we're meant to do here. And a lot of these quote unquote disorders, like, given the right perspective, can really, really dissipate, because it's the conceptualization that's often off. How we see ourselves, it's kind of like it's misdiagnosed. Like, if you take your car to the wrong mechanic, like, you'll spend forever working on your car. But like the right mechanic takes him 30 minutes, he just pulls out the right piece and that's it. So a lot of it is conceptualization. So that's really when my practice began. And then I also, similar concept, I started working with eating disorders and helping create eating disorder treatment centers. And again, it was a very sterile model, like the same system in treatment center in a treatment center. So it's like groups, certain processes, certain research based, yada yada. But ultimately, is the relapse rate was like 70%. So it was basically as effective as going to Italy for vacation. So it was like a certain point, I was just like, okay, like, this is such a waste of time, and we're billing people $10,000 a day, you know. So
Okay.
well, retreat centers are pricey, they go through your insurance. I'm talking about like, hospitalization level or high levels of care.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is, like, using a combination of like in-body perspectives, a combination of psychology, a combination of other, ancient practices, and also like modern research, like a combination of these things is really helpful. So I created also like a wellness center, which we do. It's a hybrid, virtual and in-person wellness center where we work with eating disorders, work with mental issues, and with a combination of like holistic practitioners and like, you know, uh, licensed professionals in the Western field. So, and they all work together and create our own unique practices. So that's like my background of where I'm coming from and my personal journey. A lot of it was just meshing a lot of different things together. And yeah, that's kind of also bringing it back to the retreat. That's really what a lot of the combination is. It's more subtle. Like, it's not about just using a hammer on everything. Like, the hammer is meant for the nail, but when you're using a screw, you need a screwdriver. Like, there's different things, and it takes a certain level of, let's look back at this. Let's be at a place where we're able to look and be intelligent about this. Because if we keep doing something and it isn't working, then it's not working. It's not that complicated. Like, we need to change it up. So so that's been my process a lot, and it still is. Like, I still find myself at a place where I'm at a place where I feel like I'm not on a healing journey anymore in that way. Like, I feel healed. There's no part of me that's like, oh, I'm wounded, da da da. There's still, I mean, parts, like, not like I'm perfect, but there's, for me, it's more about wellness at this point. It's more about like, okay, like, when I see about where I could be, like, and I see where I am, like, that differential is important to me. Like, whoa, okay, like, you know, uh, I'm doing work and I'm getting tense. I actually want to do work and dance through it, like, move, groove. All right, yeah, I got to respond to that email. Well, I kind of like that also. It's like, where I'm speaking to a client, like, it energizes me to help them and see them like go from like a PTSD state to a powerful, just feeling great state. Like, that's fun to watch it. Maybe I can make it more creative for myself. So it becomes more of an art. So I would say that's kind of more of my journey is finding these little tweaks, little shifts that suddenly open another door, and it's coming more of a dance than a science, more of a art than a science, more of, and I think it's integral. There is, I would say, science piece in my life and others, and I think that's a major piece that's missing. Like you can't have one without the other. You can't heal and you can't grow if you don't have your mind. And you can't heal and grow if you don't use your body. And we've isolated these processes so much, and we've made like rituals and spiritual practices and these beautiful things, and without including psychology, without including basic fundamental schemas and ways we think and our programming and our traumas. And then you can talk about your traumas in a therapy office in secret and no one talk to anyone and pay someone to listen to you and then expect that you're not going to feel any shame and you're going to change. That's not realistic. You're not going to get in your body. Like it's a complete sham. So we need to have like these processes mixed together. And that's where I find the magic occurs when we integrate wholesomeness, community, brotherhood, my personal, quirks, unique way of being, as well as like my schemas, my thoughts. Yeah, that's a trauma of mine. Yep, that's true. And also like, hey, let's just dance. Like, let's just move our body. How does that feel? Like, oh, suddenly I see things differently. Okay, who cares why it worked? It worked. Like, we don't have to be so complicated about this. Like, if it makes you feel good, then it's good. So there's a certain level of like creativity and openness, like simplicity. And that subtle simplicity is actually, I find, far more powerful than being powerful. Like, so that's what I found. The discipline and my personal, like, it's funny because Malcolm says I'm like very disciplined, and I never saw myself that way ever. you know? So he's like, you're so disciplined. Like, you just work all day. Like, before I go to sleep, I do this. I wake up in the morning. First thing in the morning, I do this. And I'm like, oh, I never even saw that as discipline. I saw that as like you're saying before, it was like a flow. It just felt good. Like, this feels good. This feels good. This feels good. Wait, how much better can I feel if I do all of these things all the time? So there wasn't like inhibition of like shame or a problem with it. It was just flowing. It was fun. I kept feeling good. And that's kind of bringing it back to the retreat, like a major part. Like, how do we bring this to people? It has to be a forward motion, a positive feeling, not just, the peeling off the layers, but the peeling off the layers allows us to dance, to flow, and we need to have that. So that combination is such a like 1-2 combo, such a beautiful, yin and yang.
Sounds amazing. It really
Yeah.
does. I wanted to hear more about finding the body. You said your whole like journey shifted when
Sure.
you started to realize it was in the body. What discipline or what got you?
Well, even as we speak it out, there's like so many levels to that reality. So many, I would say, dimensions. And for me, I'm very into meditation and meditative practices. So, like, some of the answer to this question is across different spectrums, maybe how I would see it. But I would say that the number one thing is every thought you have, every feeling is like feeling, the word feeling. Feel. You actually feel it. Like it's a sensation in the body, right? Now, most people are so disconnected, like, oh, I didn't even know that bothered me until you pointed it out, or I didn't even realize I was hungry, or like, oh, I feel so ugly, fat, this, that, and like, and the reality might be like, actually, you're like emaciated, dude. You're not even like people are so disconnected from how they're feeling in their body,
Right. They also say a lot of times, I feel, when really it's I think.
Right.
Like, I feel like a failure. Like, do you feel like are your organs failing? Like, what's failing? Like,
well, that's where it gets tricky.
I
But
think.
that's the thing. You think it, but there at some point there was a sensation.
Yeah.
And your body felt like a
Believed
failure,
us.
felt the feeling, and our brain interpreted that as failure. And then we said, hey, we don't want to feel that anymore, right? That sounds like a not good thing.
Yeah.
Let's just shut the body down. And at some point, the body unanimously agreed, its board member decided this body is more effective and he'll get more done if he just shuts up. So we just shut it down. And there's a certain level of it's okay to shut down. It's a function. It's not a sin. It's a question of, is it serving you? Much like you wear your rubber boots outside in the rain, when you come indoors, like it might not work. Like you might be in business and you're like getting things done, and you come home and you're like a sociopath. You can't talk to anyone. How's it going? Good. Like you lost the ability to relate to your family because you can't do both. And part of the problem is we've lost the art of coming back in the body. So when I say coming back to the body, a lot of it, there's specific practices, and it's not that complicated. And I would say it's a little bit of like you're seducing your body, you're getting intimate with your body and soft with your body. And there's also certain, like, I would say, direct practices. Like, do this thing, you will connect to your body. But we have to respect the body's reasoning. Why did I disconnect from my body in the first place? For me, let's say, I had traumas that were really brought up a lot for me, to the point where I was having debilitating panic attacks. So, like, my body felt, what's a better idea? Why don't you just not feel? Why don't you just numb out? So I could feel anger maybe. I could feel maybe fear occasionally if it was really strong. But aside from that, I was numb. And most people live their lives that way. So we have to respect there's a reason why we're disconnecting. And we have to resolve that before we reconnect. So that's what I'm saying. It's an art. You can't just it's like going to your car and it's cold outside. You're not going to want to be in there. Like, our body has to be a comfortable place. So we want to create practices that strengthen our vagal tone, our nervous system, our glandular system, like the science aspects. Yes. And then we want to bring in, okay, what's connected to the body, the subtler, gentler practice. And then as your body's comfortable, like, you start like just feeling fine in it. And then when it feels fine, it starts feeling good. And you start laughing and living life, and you're like, this is a good place to live in. I like this. You start going like, I'm talking to someone and it just feels good. Like, I want to give them a hug. And it feels nice. Like, or I'm just looking at a sunset and it's like beautiful. Wow. Like, so we start to, start living again. So I hope that answers the question. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping for something more like, hey, I did this, and I did
Oh,
that,
okay, sure.
like some
Yeah,
specific
so
tools
I
that
don't I
would.
don't want to say I'm going to do the following thing to reconnect you to the body, because I don't suggest teaching that to public, because
No, no,
not
just
everyone's ready for
personal,
it.
just personal. You.
So the practice I use for myself is what I would share. Like, I've done maybe 3 or 4 practices. I will say I'll give a general theme though, if that's okay. Like, I don't give, like, I feel like just teaching people practice and them doing it can be harmful.
Hmm.
Because, like, in that
Disclaimer.
specific case, yeah, I'm literally
Disclaimer.
saying, here's the door, like, to all of your pain. Go ahead and open it. Like,
Oh,
no, you shouldn't open it. There's a reason why it's closed. So no, I'm not gonna just tell people go ahead and open the door. There's a reason why it's closed. So I would say, once you address the nervous system, I'd say the next place is really learning how to get soft with our body, learning how to feel our own body. It's as simple as that. Starting from the outside. I would say, can you feel your face? Can you feel your feet? Yeah, I mean, you know what? Maybe I'll just do it as a caution. So if you're listening to this, don't do this if you're still having panic attacks. Like, don't do this if you're still getting anxious. But I would start by a simple practice of, yeah, like touching your foot, feeling your own foot, naming the foot. This is my toe. This is my pinky. Like,
like,
simple, going through the body. It's a subtle thing. And your body goes, oh, you want to hear me? You want to listen? Okay, I'll show you more. Much like if right now I said, do you notice your butt? You're like, well, now that you mention it, I kind of feel the chair below me. Like, but until then you didn't. The same
right.
thing. So you start like, oh, you want to listen? Sure, I'll give you information. But I would just, it's a word of caution. Like, don't go there until you're at a place where you're able to go there and you're able to bring up those things, if that makes sense.
It sounds like an
Yeah.
infant. Like an infant discovers their toes, and they're just like, you ever watch them? They're like
Yeah.
watching their hand, like, am I
Yeah.
controlling this?
But much of us are there. Much of
Right.
us
So
are
getting
still in
no, then we
infancy about
lost
it.
that. We
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
lost it. So coming back to
Yeah.
to the basics, like learn your again, don't take it for
Physical body.
granted. It's a new
Yeah.
day. It's a new body.
Yeah. Like, wow, interesting. It moves. It opens and closes according to the commands. It can move. Interesting, huh? All right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Who is controlling this body? I mean, that's a great question to ask.
One for the saints and the philosophers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Anything else to share before I ask you about practicals? Like, when is this happening? How many people are you expecting? I don't know if we need to announce the cost over here, but just like details.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
So we're doing this in the last week of February. So what is it? It's 5 days, 4 nights. So Thursday, we'll can create a container space. So Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, Sunday, Monday checkout. there's an option to stay longer at additional costs. And I recommend those if you're already in Costa Rica. Take the time, maybe explore a little more if you're already here. But we're keeping the cost. This is not let's say a money-making venture for us. It's more of a work of passion. Come with real expenses and real things. So it's I'm making the entry at a point where I think that most people can afford. Especially you find people, they'll spend whatever it is on a vacation to go out and to Cabo and drink whatever. But for the years of weight and baggage they walk around the day to day, that's really holding them back from like the goals and like progressing in life. They won't. So helping people in that regard by trying to make the barrier of entry, at a point where they can enter. So to reach out to us directly, there's going to be a website and flyers and things like that we'll be sending out. And you can always look up on Instagram, Shema Retreats. And
how do you spell it?
SHEMA. Shema.
Shema Retreats. 2 words.
Yeah.
On Instagram.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's anything else I missed, Tony, on like
how many people are you expecting or catering to?
We're catering to 15 and under. So
maximum 15 people.
We're looking for like a 10 to 15 window to make this
more intimate.
Yeah, exactly. We want to hold a good container, a good space, and have time for everybody. And I also think it's quite unique. Like Yanni was saying earlier, this is not necessarily a chest beating kind of event. Though you're welcome to chest beat as you like. I say this is more for really, really doing work that you can integrate, and it's more subtle, and you'll see the work last over a long period. You very, very well may have some big breakthroughs. That's definitely a thing. But those I find tend to happen they don't happen on the spot. Then don't plan for it to happen. It's just like it's come open and ready, and what shows up there is going to show up, and we think and we're confident that we have the skills to help you progress. Like we're guaranteeing results. There's no way you're not walking out of this with significant changes.
If you're open.
So
you can block anything. We know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if I'm hearing the theme is soft. I hear a lot of soft in the conversation here. Gentle, nice to ourselves.
Oh yeah.
That sounds really cozy.
It's much more gentle, for sure.
And gentle doesn't mean avoiding hardship.
No.
The approach doesn't need to be beat out. It will come out.
It's much more the middle path. Absolutely.
It's like hypnobirthing.
Sure. That's a different podcast.
Pushing. Okay.
But I would say it's in a way it's more developed in that way where I think it's kind of like maybe an artist uses a smaller brush, when you know what you're doing, you're more precise with it. And a lot of processes are so broad and big, and so let's just make a big bang and shake things up because they don't know what's gonna hit. So it's like just throw it all out. It's like a multivitamin. It's like just take it all, and then it's like, well, all they really need is folic acid. Like all they really needed was some B12. So we want to really because the point of life is not for people to just keep copying us and copying this. The point of life is for people to think and learn and become their own leader, become their own person. And their own leader doesn't mean the same thing for everyone. The number one thing it does mean is being able to self-assess, be able to go like, well, what's going on? All right, that's something that keeps coming up. Okay, well, now I learned a lot of processes to help me with that. Okay, I can use those. I can explore other ones, but I have a framework, and I can work with that.
It's beautiful. Okay, I think that's a wrap.
Thank you, Manny.
Well, thank you guys for coming on. A pleasure meeting you.
Yeah.
And
same here, man.
Hope to stay in touch. Now we have a WhatsApp group, so
yeah.
And I'd love to hear more information myself about the retreat. I am very interested. I will not lie.
Okay.
Okay. Shkoyach.